Today's video is sponsored by Rusty Helper. It's a free Discord bot that you can invite to any server, and the amount of features it has is insane. If you're a server owner, you can type server and then your IP, and look at all this information that you can publicly display to all of your members. You can pin it so it updates to your members, or you can even click on the map icon to get a live map feed with monuments. You can also check out personal stats and hundreds of other things. Make sure to go check it out in the description below. Hello and welcome back to another video. In today's video I'm going to be showing you how you can make scrap or any other resource for that matter through the magic of sales. With the recent drone update, if you live near outpost or bandit camp, you can actually pay 20 scrap for a drone to go pick up a sale from a vending machine anywhere across the map. This alone completely changes the market for Rust. Not only can you now sell to a wider range of people as you can reach more people who are too lazy to walk to your shop, but it allows you to specifically target people who are isolated, or if you're isolated yourself, you can easily find yourself a niche and a comparative advantage. For example, let's say you're isolated in the snow and you have an abundant access to nodes. Why would anyone walk all the way out to your store just to buy nodes from you when, if they're in the snow themselves, they could just farm it? With this new update, someone could be on the other side of the map, not have access to a lot of nodes, and they would gladly buy from your store at the exchange for something that they could collect more easily. Okay, so now that you know that trading's more viable and why, I'm going to show you how you can maximize your profits. First, let's bring in a little bit of economics. You need to produce and sell what you have a comparative advantage with. For those who don't know, a comparative advantage is when you can produce something at a lower cost than anyone else. Because with gaming, the only input we have is time. In Rust, this pretty much means whatever you can produce at a lower time than someone else. This might be for a range of factors due to your skill at the game, your location on the map, or even things such as your group size. Regardless of what it is, you need to figure out what you have a comparative advantage in. And if you know exactly what your advantages are, then I'd highly recommend you go back to playing Rust and just start using the vending machines and drones more often. But if you don't know what your advantages are, that's fine. For the rest of the video, I'm going to be showing you some ideas, or jobs so to speak, that you can get yourself into in order to make a nice profit. The first idea is to sell essential BPs or items that many people might not have the blueprint for. This obviously works the best when it's a blueprint wipe, but it can work on map wipes too if the server players aren't always the same. This works best if you're a group with dedicated members who camp the high tier monuments, or if you're a solo who likes to do lots of puzzle runs, and you're decent enough at PvP that you can fend off other people competing for the loot. And even if you don't meet the criteria that I just stated, if you're playing a server after a map wipe and you retain some of the BPs, not every player is going to be in the same boat as you, so you can sell some of the BPs that you've learnt to newer players who are just playing the server for the very first time. My advice for selling blueprint items that people might not have is look at the tech trees and choose items which are lower to the bottom. The reason is because people are only going to buy the item off you if it's going to cost them too much to go down the tech tree instead. For example, no one's going to buy an MP5 off you if for an extra 125 scrap they could just BP the reinforced glass window and then work their way down the tech tree. But someone might buy an AK off you if they don't plan on going all the way down the tech tree to get it. Of course, this is all subjective, and what blueprint might be useful for one player could be completely useless to another. However, I will go over some of the universal items that you'll likely get a decent sale on regardless of the server. Starting off with tier 1 items, everything on screen I think is a decent sale. The main reason is because none of them are located too high into the tech tree, and most of these items have uses to a lot of players. The reason I didn't go over any of the electricity components is because if someone's going to be doing electricity, they're likely just going to go down the tech tree themselves, as it doesn't cost that much to get to some of the essential items. Now moving on to tier 2, we have a lot of options. The reason is because the tier 2 tech tree is extremely long and it can be expensive to go through everything. Straight away you'll notice that it's quite expensive to get to some of the better tier 2 guns, including the Python, Custom, Tommy and SAR. Therefore selling these early game into wipe can be very beneficial. I wouldn't recommend selling anything on the left side of the tech tree, as personally if you want to get full road sign and meds as most players do, going through the hazmat suit isn't that much of a cost, as you'd lose the items if you were to BP each one individually anyway. And finally with tier 3, I don't really recommend selling anything, as most of the items players will just go down the tech tree anyway, and most of them are too close to the top. The only thing that I can consider selling is an AK, as some people just really love that gun and they want to use it straight away. However, most players will want to get an MP5 first so that they can farm up, and then they're going to go down the tech tree anyway to ensure that they have full metal kits, and things like rockets you can't really use unless you have an AK anyway, so not many players are going to want rockets if they don't already have the stuff prior. Moving on from selling BPs after spamming monuments is the Chad. If you're an absolute beast with weapons and you love to just kill everyone and steal all of their other guns, eventually you're going to get a pile of revolvers which are absolutely useless to you, but they might be useful to someone else. And if you're in a larger group and you're constantly roaming AK, there gets to a point in wipe when things like SARS and other tier 2 guns are useless, so you might as well sell them to other players. For most Chads, you want to be selling your revolvers and P250s as soon as you get them, and later into wipe when you start racking up on tier 3 guns, start selling all your customs, Tommies and SARS for a relatively cheap price, as these guns are essentially useless to you. And if you've got a really big penis, you can even sell your LRs to let the rest of the server know that you don't even touch that gun on the account of your AK spray being leaps and bounds above us mere mortals.
I doubled him. He's dead.
Next up is a much more simple approach. All you have to do is live on the east coast and you can farm animals and sell their resources. If you didn't know, animals migrate towards the east coast, that's why you'll get a bunch more if you live there. Whenever larger groups start to gear up, they often forget to bring a crossbow and a bone knife in order to farm animals. So if you farm in bulk, you can actually sell to some of the larger groups on the server, and personally whenever I'm built on the west coast in the snow, I would gladly pay multiple nodes in order to make sure that I have low grades for my meds, leather for my kits, and a fridge full of food. Next up we have the node farmer. If you live in the snow and specifically next to mountains, you can get quite a lot of nodes in a very short amount of time. And because nodes are used for pretty much everything in Rust, you'll have no difficulty selling your excess nodes. If you're going to take on this role, then I highly recommend you at least have an ice pick, or better yet, a jackhammer. There's really not much to it. If you have a base in a spot which has lots of nodes, then take advantage of that, constantly farm the nodes and then sell them for other items. Next up, if you have access to a large compound with multiple furnaces, or you have an active furnace base that you're not using, you could offer to cook people's ore for them. To put it into perspective, if I lived out in the snow and I did one node run in about 10 minutes and managed to get an inventory of sulfur and metal, I would gladly trade it for half of the value if it was cooked for me. So if you're a super lazy Rust player, then you could play the role that many Rust players refer to as the base bitch. The only thing you really have to do is farm a little bit of wood and keep the furnaces going. Make sure to have auto turrets if you're cooking high quantities, otherwise you could lose out on your profits. And the final role I have is a regular farmer. Of course you could mass produce hemp and then sell the excess cloth, or you could do the same with berries. Personally, I think berries are probably better, as if you crossbreed berries and mass produce a large quantity of them, there's quite a wide range of things that you can produce. Whereas hemp is just limited to cloth, and if you only produce pumpkins, corn, or potatoes, you're only really getting food, which you could just live by a river and sell your excess food instead. Mass production of berries will almost always be profitable if you can sell your teas, as certain things like max health teas are invaluable to certain group members. And if you're producing some of the other teas, you could for example sell your wood teas at 10,000 wood, then someone could buy it, drink it, and the bonus that they would get would be well above 10,000. And that's it for all the jobs that I can think of right now. Of course, you're not limited to just the comparative advantage jobs, you can also just sell whatever you have excess of in your base. However, if you do sell things that you have a comparative advantage at, you'll find it much easier to make a profit. And before I end the video, I'll give some general information. At Outpost, you can locate the drone purchasing services from here, and at Bandit Camp, it's over here. Make sure that when you're setting up your vending machine, there's nothing blocking the drone's entrance point. For example, if I was to put a roof over the top of the vending machine, then anyone trying to buy from this store would get an error message. To make sure that your vending machine is exposed, I would recommend just building small vending machine shops out the front of your base. A simple design would look something like this. It's just 4 triangles, with one of which being a TC, 3 garage doors towards the vending machine. It's just designed like this so that it's around 8 rockets to get to the loot, as if you destroy a vending machine from the front side, all of the loot despawns. Make sure not to keep too much stuff in a vending machine at one time, otherwise raiders will target them. Also keep in mind that the drone delivery service costs 20 scrap, which gets lost in transaction, so when you're making your orders, make sure that they're buying in bulk. This is because if you are only selling 10 low grade at a time, if someone wanted to buy 500 low grade, they would have to pay 1,000 scrap in transit fees. However, if you set your sale at 500 low grade in one purchase, then they'd only have to pay 20 scrap for that transfer of 500 low grade. Of course, scrap is the currency in Rust, but if you don't need it, you don't have to sell your stuff for it. Personally, with the tech tree update, I haven't had much of an issue with grinding scrap these wipes, so instead I would probably rather get things like metal frag, sulfur, but it's completely up to you. And if you're curious about what your prices should be, I'm afraid I can't tell you. Every single server is different, and there's too many factors for me to consider. So what I would recommend doing is selling at a price that you're comfortable with, and if it sells too quickly, then maybe try increasing the price, and vice versa if you're not getting any sales. And do keep in mind that Outpost and Bandit Camp already sell a lot of items. You can check all of this stuff out at Rust Labs, and if you're not beating their price by 10% plus transit fees, then don't expect anyone to go to your store, as Rust is a game about progression, and people will be hesitant to buy from you if it helps you out. And that is the end of the video. I hope you found this topic interesting, and if you have any sales or advice, feel free to leave it down in the comments below so that we can help each other out. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, I will see you in the next one.